Hello, my name is Luke Mardigan, and you are listening to Be Insured, where we talk about leadership, business, and insurance. That way, on your worst day, when you need it the most, you will be insured. For those of you who know me, I'm a big reader. I love books. I love podcasts. I love learning. And one of my favorite books is actually a 2-decade-old book. It's the world's #1 bestseller on personal finance, the #2 most sold business book in the world, only behind Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of a Highly Effective Person. And it is actually so popular that it has become a book that college professors teach from to their students. And I think one of the reasons why it's so popular is because it's so practical and so easy to understand that even, your common man, your common human like you and me can understand it and apply it. And the book we're talking about today is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. It's if you haven't read it, obviously I recommend it, but we're going to give you the cliff notes today. So thanks to Robert for writing this book 20 years ago. And to talk about this book with me today is my co-host and the director of operations at the Mardigan Agency, Alec Nirenberg. Alec, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Luke.
All right, so there's 3 main lessons that we learned from Robert in this book. And these are lessons that I try to share with all of my clients, and that's one of the reasons why I'm making this episode, because this is so important, and it has changed so many of my clients' lives that I want our listeners, I want to canonize this. I want it on record that this is life-changing for our clients and something that's changed my life as both a business owner and in my personal finances. It's changed my wife's world as far as how she handles things financially in our medical management practice that we own together. And it's helped a lot of my consulting clients. So if you're listening today and you want to get a slightly higher level of thinking with your finances, if you want to be a little more competent in the financial world, then this is the episode for you. So general overview of what the book is about. It's about Robert's 2 dads. There's another author, Guy Kiyosaki, who I actually listen to and read. But Robert had 2 dads growing up in Hawaii. And one of them was his real dad. His real dad was a superintendent of all the schools in the state of Hawaii, made 6 figures his entire life, had a master's degree, and was well-respected in the community, well-known in the community. So based on that description, you kind of would assume he'd be the rich dad, right? But he actually died penniless. He actually left debt for Robert to pay when he died, which unfortunately is all too common the story in America today.
Right.
You hear that more than you don't.
I mean, that's the first thought when somebody passes away, after the grieving period. I think it's, wow, what debts are there to clear up now?
Yeah. You kind of have to say, hey, sorry, anything we can do to help? And then also there's a GoFundMe up there, right?
Yeah.
Which that'd be a great cue to go into life insurance, but I'm not gonna, because that's not the point of today's show.
Right. Yeah.
But you should have life insurance, and you should buy it from the Mardigan Agency. So back to the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He had 2 dads. One was his real dad. The second one was his friend's dad, who lived down the road. And his friend's dad had an 8th grade education. He grew up dirt poor, but he learned how to start businesses, and he learned about real estate. He learned about money. And what he did is he went around and everyone he knew who had money, he talked to them and he learned lessons from them. And those lessons were eventually passed on to Robert. And this obviously, actually the rich dad, his friend's dad, ended up dying the largest landowner in all of Hawaii.
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much.
That's valuable.
I can't imagine what an acre of land in Hawaii sells for today.
$100,000 probably.
Probably more than that.
Yeah, more than that maybe. I don't know.
Something outrageous. That's like California, right? Hawaii's like, there's only so much land, right?
Yeah.
So obviously died very wealthy, left millions to charity, left millions to his family. Incredibly wealthy person. But, what this did is it created conflict inside of Robert to where he, wanted to listen to his dad because he was successful, well-respected, made money. But he started learning over time that the advice he was getting from his dad was toxic, and his dad's financial position was not improving over time.
Right.
And at the same time, he's watching his friend's dad get richer and richer, buy more properties, start more businesses, employ more people. And so he's like 11 or 12, I think, in the book, and he makes a decision that he's going to follow his rich dad. And what his rich dad says is not his real dad, which broke his heart, right? It was a heartbreaking decision.
Right.
And I wish we all had a rich dad. Honestly, that's pretty cool. And there's three main takeaways from this book, and I want to share those with our listeners today.
Yeah.
And the first of those main takeaways is a concept where that rich dad taught Robert, and it's pay yourself first.
My favorite concept.
Yeah, it's funny when we were going through the notes for the shows, you and I, you were like, "Oh, I was really hoping you were going to bring that up."
Yeah, I mean it's the most important thing. That's why we work. You know, I think a lot of us lose touch with, you know, why we give our time, we put a value on our time, and we give it to somebody else. We do it to pay bills or something like that, and we lose touch with the fact that we're doing it for ourselves too. Like we need to get back to that principle of we're earning for ourselves and not just to pay other people for whatever we might owe or whatever we have to buy for our families.
Well, the reality is, I mean, who's going to scream louder, your savings account or your creditors?
Your creditors probably, if you don't have a savings. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't have a savings, then nobody's going to say anything. Your savings account isn't knocking on your door and asking you for the keys to your house.
Right.
Right. But your creditors
will demand it and they'll take them from you.
Yeah. They'll just file a court filing and get it.
Right.
And then you get the eviction notice. You don't have a choice.
Yep.
And so it's easy to fall into that because we tend to pay attention to the loudest voice in the room, or, another way to put it is the squeaky wheel gets the attention. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we work and work and work, and we end up with all our bills paid, and we have nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
And that is the kind of common American way of living. And Robert's real dad, that's how he lived. He brought home his paycheck, he'd pay all his bills and whatever he had left, if he had anything left, he could use for himself.
Yep.
Well, Robert's rich dad did the opposite. He paid himself first and then paid his bills. And so, of course, Robert was kind of confused by that, right? How do you pay yourself? Like, what if you don't have enough money left over for your bills? And so, really interesting, right? Well, rich dad would go and work second jobs. He would mow lawns. He'd do whatever he had to do, go sell another account, whatever it was that he had to do to get the money to pay the creditors. Or he'd work with the creditors and try to float it to the next month or whatever the story is.
Yep.
But no matter what, he never wavered on the pay yourself first principle. And so I think we did a show on automating your finances. There's a number of books that talk about it. Automatic Millionaire was one of the first ones that came out. I want to say that was like in 03, 04 maybe. And really good book. In today's world, automating paying yourself is easier than ever. And at the end of the show, we're going to talk about how I do that and how you can too. So first principle we learned from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, pay yourself first. Pretty cool, huh?
Very cool.
Second lesson learned. It's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. Reality is, regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum, the current tax laws in 2020 are the most favorable tax laws that we've had in 100 years. Our income tax brackets are the lowest that we've had in 100 years. We likely will never see this in our lifetime again, which means that if they're the lowest they've ever been, that means at some point it's going to go up. So if you make more money, there's actually a story I talked about with David McKnight. He's a New York Times bestseller. He was on the show earlier this year.
Okay.
And he tells the story of Ronald Reagan, how the max tax rate in the 70s was 90%. Well, and I think you hit it at 200 grand. These could be arbitrary numbers, but I want to say it was 200 grand. Well, he made about 100 grand per film. So there's a period in the 70s when the tax bracket was so high that he never did more than 2 films in a year, because every penny he made over 200 grand, he kept 10 cents on the dollar.
Right.
So why would he work anymore, right?
Yeah.
Well, if we ever get back to those high income tax brackets again, this concept of it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep becomes even more important. But Alec, did you know that the federal government has put programs in place that allow your average everyday person to put money away tax-free?
I am familiar with that, but I'm sure you could probably educate me a little more on a few things.
Well, there's a number of ways to do this. The most obvious one for anybody who earns under 130 grand as an individual, or I think it's 205 or 206 this year as a married couple.
Yep.
Roth IRA.
Yep. Super
easy way to do that. I'm not going to go into how to set it all up. We'll talk more about that stuff later.
Yeah.
But that's the obvious first step. And then you get 18 grand per person for 401ks. And there's only one specific type of investment where you can put money aside tax-free and never pay tax on the gain. And we'll talk about that at the end of the episode.
Yeah, I look forward to that.
And there's no limit to it. So for all my high earners, I don't know a wealthy person. And when I say wealthy, I'm talking like net worth decamillionaires type thing who doesn't have this product.
Right.
This is the secret of the rich. It is how the rich stay rich. It's how trust fund babies are made. It is the secret key. And we're making it available to everybody on the show. So it's pay yourself first. It's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. And unfortunately, for most Americans, they work for the first 3 months of the year just to pay their tax bill.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to say that again. Most Americans work for the first 2 or 3 months of the year just to pay their tax bill.
That shouldn't be such a normal thing to understand. I mean, that shouldn't be the norm. But
well, why pay more than you have to?
Right.
Right. We should all pay. I think we should all pay.
A fair share.
We got to pay for the military and all. Great. That's awesome. But why pay more than you have to?
Right.
And so the third lesson, so pay yourself first. It's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. Third lesson is that the poor spend money on liabilities and the wealthy invest in assets. So a good example of this, when you rent an apartment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every year you sign a lease, it's usually a year lease.
Pay $12,000-$14,000 a year.
Yep. It's
no equity. You have nothing to show for it.
You have, at the end of that, you threw $12,000 in a hole.
Right.
You actually threw it in someone else's pocket. Is what you did.
Rent an apartment for a decade, and you've thrown away $200,000.
Yep, easy. And if you're like on a college campus, you're looking at like $3,000 a month.
Yeah.
And $36,000 a year, right? Yeah. Like scary numbers. It starts getting really scary.
Yeah, depending on where you live. Go out to Irvine, California, where rents $4,000 a month for 1,000 square foot apartment.
Dude, one of my mentors was paying $15,000 a month.
Yeah,
it was a nice place. It was like four blocks from
you could see some
from
water,
Venice Beach and stuff.
Yeah.
But still, $15,000 a month.
Yeah, right. It's a different lifestyle too, but
it is. But man, good Lord, there's a lot of beautiful places to live. You can get a lot more.
Yeah, that money goes a long way in an IRA, a Roth IRA.
100%. Yeah. Well, you can, that's limited to $6,000, right? Yeah. And you have to make sure you meet the income requirements and stuff. But the poor spend on liabilities and the wealthy invest in assets. So renting versus owning. All right. So we just went through what happens when you rent.
Yep.
When you own, right? So you buy a house for $200,000 today, and in 10 years it's worth $240,000.
Yep.
And all the while you were paying that bill, that mortgage, just like you would have been paying rent.
Right.
The difference is your balance is going down every year.
Yep.
It's not congruent to how much you're putting in because you're paying the interest up front. But in this 3% interest rate market, it's not that significant.
Right.
I want to say mine is like maybe a third of the payment goes to interest right now. And it's somewhere in the threes. I can't remember, but I only know this because we just refied. So you're paying that down. So let's just say that your payment's $1,000 a month on a $200,000 house, and 10 years later you go from if you put 20% down, it's $160. 10 years later you're at $110.
Yep.
But your house is worth $230.
Right.
You just paid yourself by investing in an asset instead of a liability.
Yes.
Now here's the thing about this concept. All things being equal, would you rather treat your insurance program like poor dad or rich dad?
Rich dad.
It's obvious, right?
Yeah.
Because for most people, their insurance program is a liability, right? They buy term insurance, they pay it month after month after month after month, and they're just putting money in the coffers of insurance companies with getting nothing in return.
Yeah.
So what is an easy way to pay yourself? Make sure that you're keeping more of what you make and that you're investing in an asset instead of a liability. Cash value life insurance, my friend.
Okay.
Using the example of my newborn son, just $200 a month allows him to retire as a millionaire and have access to that cash at any time for any reason that he needs without taxation on that growth, or on, sometimes if you're a business owner, there's ways to make it so that you're not even paying it on the premiums you put in.
Indeed.
That is a secret I learned from the Canadians. God bless Canada, Justin Bieber, Jim Carrey, Drake. God bless you guys, all those financial advisors that taught me well when I went over there. Their average tax rate is 52%. So they're looking for ways to jettison money like crazy, just trying to figure out how to hide it, I don't want to call hide it. That sounds really dirty.
I didn't want to use that word. But.
Yeah. How to launder your money legally. No, I'm not going to put that on a billboard, I don't think. And these Canadians taught me that using cash value life insurance is a phenomenal way to have tax advantage money that works for you and is accessible at any time. If that's something you're interested in, if you want to live like Rich Dad, pay yourself first, keep more of what you make, and invest in assets instead of liabilities, you can reach us at The Mardigan Agency on Facebook and Instagram. That's The Mardigan Agency on Facebook and Instagram, and we'll hook you up. Have a great day. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Be Insured.